Well, this thing got a lot of hype, which is usually not a good thing. It just sets you up for disappointment, which is why I try not to get too excited. It's pretty rare that a movie that gets a lot of hype is actually as good as the hype would suggest. Most of the time, even if it's good, it's not great and you're still disappointed. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. I'd rather just watch a movie with no expectations, or even low expectations. But when critics and audiences agree that a movie is really good, it's pretty hard not to get at least a bit excited. So I was a tiny bit excited to see this because it looked really good. And it starts off really well. The first thing you see is an obituary. You get this droning kind of ambient score. Everything's just kind of creepy and unsettling for no particular reason. But this thing does not pull any punches. It just gets right down to business. It's a creepy, weird movie and it wants you to know it. The story is about a family who lost their grandmother and they're dealing with a lot of things. I think the girl's supposed to have some sort of developmental issues. She's just generally a strange kid. The parents seem nice though, and the brother seems fairly well adjusted. But they make sure that everything still feels a little bit off. You know everything is not fine. And the atmosphere and the sense of unease is probably my favorite thing about this movie. They use some tilt shift on the lens to make everything look like miniatures, which plays into the rest of the movie. Although that part doesn't actually seem to serve much of a purpose other than being creepy, kind of like collecting dolls. But there are some really cool cuts in this. Some of the most creative cuts I've seen in a while. Really good stuff. And about 30 minutes in, it got really dark. And I mean dark. That was some of the most harrowing stuff I've seen in a movie ever. Really well done. Gut-wrenching stuff. And at this point, I'm a little surprised that a movie like this got as big as it did, because it gets real. The characters' reactions to one of the worst tragedies a person can go through are so brutal and real that it was genuinely uncomfortable to sit through. I was 100% on board, completely invested. This thing was gripping. Really a super dark drama more than a horror movie. I loved it. Then about halfway through the movie, there's a scene that completely ruined everything they just spent an hour building up. And just like that, it lost me. In one scene, I went from being all in to barely interested. That's quite a feat. And from there on, I just wasn't engaged with the movie, pretty much at all. They did some cool things, had some cool shots, but I just wasn't invested anymore. It lost me, and it never got me back. Didn't seem to be any logic or set of rules to what was going on. Things just happened and literally anything could apparently happen. Because why make sense, I guess? I honestly can't remember a movie that let me down so badly halfway through and so quickly. In one scene, it undermined everything it had been doing. Well, it wasn't really even that scene that undid the movie. In and of itself, the scene wasn't terrible. I could just see exactly where it was going, and I wasn't interested. And I was right. They decided to go with a more traditional horror movie plot. And apparently it worked for a lot of people, but it didn't work for me. Why go through that much effort to build something unique and different, and then not follow through with it? You might as well just tell me from the get-go that it's gonna be a regular horror movie, instead of getting my hopes up. I guess that's what bothers me the most, is the wasted potential. It's such a well-crafted movie from technical standpoint. It's fantastic, but then the story just failed to deliver. But hey, I'm not a huge fan of horror in general, at least not traditional horror. I love a good horror movie that does something a bit different, but in general, most horror movies just don't interest me that much. And this one seems to have found its audience. They did something right, but that audience isn't me, and I just feel like it's a shame. They could have done something really cool with it, but they didn't. I mean, it genuinely felt like two completely different movies. You could shut it off halfway through and experience a genuinely unique and painfully emotional movie. Or you could skip ahead to the halfway point and experience a straightforward horror. They're just that different. Would I recommend it? I mean, on the one hand, definitely. On the other hand, not really. So go watch it or don't. I'm not your dad.